The Huntsman Winter's War is a prequel/sequel to Snow White and the Huntsman, starring Chris Hemsworth, Jessica Chastain, Emily Blunt, and Charlize Theron, and is directed by Cedric Nicholas-Troyan. That's a really cool name. The first act is mostly a prequel side, and then the second and third acts are the sequel elements. So the prequel parts follow mostly the two queens, Ravenna and Freya. And after Freya experiences this tragedy, she just turns into this evil ice queen and then builds up an army where the only rule is that they can't fall in love. And Ravenna and Freya, they both are kind of trying to fight over who can dominate the world. Eric and Sarah are two huntsmen in Freya's army, and they end up falling in love, so since that's not allowed, they are, thrown out, stuff happens, and then they basically have to fight the evil queens. I had the opportunity to go to a free early screening of this movie, so I figured I'd go check it out and then give a review of it. If you like Snow White and the Huntsman, you'll definitely like this movie. Personally, I wasn't really crazy about that movie. I ended up only watching about half of it because I wasn't that interested or invested in the movie. But I think this movie was a tad bit better at kind of grabbing my interest. Emily Blunt and Charlize Theron were terrifying in this movie, and they definitely stood out the most compared to the other characters. I knew going in that Theron would be good because from what I saw in Snow White and the Huntsman, she is just scary. She knows how to play an evil queen. And Emily Blunt, she's a very good actress, but I wasn't really sure how she'd portray this kind of evil Ice Queen, but she did a really good job, and I like the depth that they went into with her character for the prequel side that kind of shows why she became evil. Emily Blunt's character Freya might actually be my favorite character in the movie, but I will say that I felt her costume was a little tacky. I think it fit for her character, but in my opinion, it just kind of looked okay. I don't know. Some of it just kind of didn't work for me. Chris Hemsworth and Jessica Chastain were great as well. They didn't stand out too much for me, though. I feel like Blunt and Theron were just kind of, they showed off more in their acting abilities, I feel. Jessica Chastain had this accent in the movie, as did Chris Hemsworth, but for some reason, Chastain's accent kind of threw me off at first, but it ended up growing on me. And that's one thing I noticed about this movie is it kind of just grew on me as it went on. The first and second acts were okay, but I think the third act really picked it up, and I liked the direction that they ended up going with. Since I wasn't digging some parts of the first and second acts, the movie felt a little long to me, but the third act I really liked a lot because I was like, ooh, like, what's gonna happen? Even though I kind of had a feeling, but it was definitely fun to watch by the end. The visual effects were decent, but I feel like the CGI sometimes wasn't that great. I personally felt like they were going for this stylistic and artsy kind of look. For me, it didn't work that well. I think some of the creatures looked really, really good, but then some of the other ones were kind of lacking. So in my opinion, it kind of felt like they blew their budget on all of these really big creatures, but then the smaller ones just kind of looked okay. There were several dwarves that were thrown in as kind of a comedic relief. While they didn't really add much to the plot, because without them, I don't think anything would have changed story-wise, but definitely it was nice to have some comedic relief, and the dwarves looked really, really good. I will say, though, that I feel like the comedy in this movie was really hit or miss, and usually it was missed for me, but there were a couple of really funny moments. There was definitely some tropiness in this movie, and I kind of figured that was going to happen since this is like a fairy tale kind of story, but I just wasn't digging the delivery of the dialogue all that much because there was definitely some cliche moments and cliche lines. Since some of this stuff can be really predictable, you have to present this stuff well in order to make it better. Even if something is predictable, that doesn't mean it's necessarily going to be bad, and I think the way some of this predictability was presented just wasn't that great. There was also some narration bits, which makes sense for a fairy tale kind of story, but at the same time, it kind of didn't work for me because I felt like it just would have been better to show what's going on and not tell. But at the same time, I see why they would add some narration just to make the movie not as long as it probably would have been had they not used narration. I also feel like the relationship between Eric and Sarah wasn't built or developed very well. They kind of rushed it because first they're kids, then boom, all of a sudden they're adults, and then, it's like, oh, they're in love. But I think they also didn't present this in the best way. I guess it was cute, their relationship, but I also wasn't really invested into it either. Other than Eric and Sarah's being kind of rushed, in my opinion, I think there were also some other elements that were kind of rushed. For example, they would kind of quickly gloss over something that was kind of important, like just by having a character throw it out and be like, oh yeah, this happened, and I'll be like, oh wait, okay, so this is what's going on now, okay. If you had just zoned out for a split second, you totally would have missed some important and key details. During the action bits, I feel like the direction could have been tighter just to make things more intense. But since this is a PG-13 film and most of the weapons being used were like swords and stuff, I feel like they wouldn't have been able to really show a lot of stuff. So I think I could kind of let that slide since this is a PG-13 film and they can't show a lot of gore and, you know, stabbing and slicing and all that stuff. So while in the end this movie did grow on me, by the third act I was really digging kind of what was going on and I did like some things that were happening. I don't think I'd ever be interested in seeing this movie again. I'm not sure why, but the story and all the other elements, they just weren't enough to kind of grab me and be like, ooh, this is really good, I'm gonna go see this again sometime. I'm gonna give The Huntsman Winter's War a 7.5 out of 10. And if you are interested in seeing this movie, or if you liked the first one, definitely see it in theaters. Otherwise, I would say rent it, because personally for me, this isn't the kind of movie where I was like, oh my gosh, I'm dying to see this, I'm gonna go see that the day it comes out. But that's just me, that's just kind of how my taste is. So if you're different, then, you know, that's kind of how it's gonna be. This is not a bad movie by any means. It just wasn't my kind of movie, and there were some problems that I had with it. But I think if you are a fan of these kinds of stories, you'll definitely like it a lot. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed the review, please give it a like or let me know how you felt about it in the comments below. And if you end up seeing this movie, also let me know what you think, because I'm curious about what other people are going to be thinking about this movie. So that wraps it up for this review. I'll see you guys next time.